G'day guys, back with the Outer Circle. The other day in getting started in Horus Heresy, I did an overview of pretty much everything available to the Legions. I call this the next step because I did the Getting Started series with the thought in mind that, hey, let's look at a starting force, what you should buy to start the game. Then that'll give you the core that you can expand from. Well, this is the expansion part of things. And with the Marines, I had a lot of trouble putting that video together because this website is laid out terribly, where a lot of the unit options available in your army list do not come up when you click on that Force Org slot or that particular faction, for example, Mechanicum. So I've done my best wherever possible to try and fill in all the blanks here, but I may have missed something. If I have, I do apologise for that, because there were things I missed on the last video. Just because there were so many different units to cover, and so many of them weren't listed. Anyway, let's get started. Archmagos Dracovic, special character, or the Archmagos. Either way, this as a HQ option gives you access to the Abeyant, and of course a character to put in the top. It's expensive, and you don't necessarily need it. So my suggestion is actually just to look at Games Workshop, and I specifically prefer the Tech Priest Dominus as a HQ option. It is the same size as the HQ that comes in the Abeyant, and you don't have to pay all the money and buy the Abeyant. And the Abeyant, which is something I've now said like 6 times in a minute, is that floating sort of dais or pulpit that the Mechanicum Magos is standing in. The actual model itself, the Mechanicum Magos, is a 40mm base model. A bit bigger than a Marine Terminator. So, just go to Games Workshop, buy a plastic one. It's a lot cheaper. You'll get plenty of upgrade options with it. And because it's a Mechanicum, you can also customize your own stuff, bits of Necron stuff, You'll find what works for you personally. Alright. In the Elite section, I just want to quickly point out the Mechanicum Magos Macrotech engines here on the right, also a viable HQ choice, because several of the HQ choices are just outright missing. There used to be the old Tech Priest Dominus, for example, sort of a snail shell-headed guy that was available. He just disappeared one day without anyone being any the wiser that it happened, and we just lost that option, the IRAD cleansers and that sort of stuff that he came with. Maybe this model will help to remedy the gap. Alright, Domitar and Myrmidon Secutors. Where do I stand on these? The Domitar are not a great unit. They are barely better than a Castellax, but a Castellax is a troop's choice. The Domitar is an elite. The Domitar is a lot bigger as a model, packs less firepower. It's just the physical stats, like it has an extra point of strength or toughness, and I think it's an extra point of strength. And it has an extra weapon skill point, maybe? Anyway, not particularly crash-hot unit. The firepower consists of a crack missile launcher, which can also fire flak missiles in the back. Yeah, pretty pathetic. But, got an FAQ, it now has a haywire flamethrower. So, it won't hurt infantry, that sort of thing. But if a vehicle gets near these guys, well, they get 2 flamethrowers each. The plus side of this is the ultimate nemesis of Leviathan Dreadnoughts and Contemptor Dreadnoughts in 30k, because any vehicle that comes near these, even a squad of 3, is going to do 6d3 graviton hits, which is on a 2+, they cause a hull point of damage, and on a 6 they cause a penetrating hit. So you do not want to get near that when it comes to charging. So excellent defense for the back line. You could position them around vital or important units and try and defend yourself. Very handy. Alright, the Mechanicum Myrmidon Secutors, I don't rate them. They're big, they're slow, they have poor armor saves. Yeah, they've got some okay weaponry with, say, the graviton guns or the phase plasma fusils that you can upgrade them with. I'd avoid the Maxim bolters. They're just why do they exist as a weapon? You know, you're probably better served by Castellax, honestly. The only thing that Myrmidon Secutors offer is the fact you can chuck them in a transport, which means as a bodyguard squad, say 6 of them, with a Magos of some description, yeah, you could have an effective combat unit on your hands, but I don't know that I'd want to go throwing that particular unit into, say, Custodes or Astartes Terminator Elite units. You're probably going to lose your squad. And something like Valataris, for example, in the Solar Auxilia, will just carve through it. Charonite Ogrins probably carve through it, so it's a tough one. Alright, troops. The bread and butter. Where do I stand on the troops? Let's start with the Thalax, because the Thalax are the go-to troops choice. Squads of 3, they jetpack around the battlefield, so, you know, a couple D6-inch move in the assault phase. So they're very rapid to move, they've got decent shooting, they've got 3 wounds each, they're toughness 5, what's not to love? Highly, highly rate them. The Silax, on the other hand, are the exact opposite. Low stats across the board, pretty much just a Space Marine stats, but you're paying a lot of points for it. All for the gimmick of a thing called a Rad Furnace, which is anything that's in contact with them, whether it's your own units or the enemy, is a -1 in toughness, and that's rough. In theory, it's good on your HQs. If you have a HQ with rad grenades and these guys and you charge an enemy, -2 the enemy toughness. But your Magos is also going to be negative toughness. I don't know that I want to go reducing the toughness on my key HQ characters in my army, especially when things like Power Fists are around, because remember, you're not knocking down enemy strength, you're knocking down their toughness. And if they swing at you with that Power Fist and obliterate your Magos, well, what's the point, really? Tech Thrall Covenant. Whether it's with Mitralox or Lazalox, for some reason the Mitralox aren't shown here because excellent website design. They're very good. Very good. In fact, depending on the Magos, you can have them so that they come back in to play after they've been killed. Very handy ability. They're also very cheap. They're a scoring unit, and they have a Feel No Pain of, I think it's 6+, which, while it's not great, adds a little bit of extra survivability to a unit which is essentially guardsmen with higher leadership. Why is it higher leadership? Well, because of the characters and stuff that you can put with them, attach to them, or buffs that you can give them. In any case, solid unit, very cheap in points, so great for sort of backline objective carrying, Zone Mortalis objective holding, that sort of thing. Alright, Sectarii Hoplites. Not super familiar with them in actual use, because I've never ever seen people playing them. I see a lot of people build them and paint them. I never see them actually get used in games. The Peltists I see a little bit. So I've got a theory hammer this one though. I think they're okay. They're not groundbreaking in either unit's case. I just don't think they have enough to offer over the Thalax, maneuverability, survivability, firepower, or over the Tech Thrall's small size cheapness. They're a real middle of the road and they don't excel in any one area. I wouldn't not take them, but they wouldn't be my first preference either. I think they're more of a go-to if you've got a force which has maybe 12 to 18 Thalax already and 20 Tech Thralls already, then maybe start looking at putting these guys in. Okay, Castellax. Darkfire Castellax, Mauler Pattern Bolt Cannon Castellax, Castellax with multi-melters. Doesn't matter what your flavor is, they're all really good units. If you're playing as Legio Cybernetica, they're going to be your core selection to build your troops from, because they are your compulsory troops choices. Now for everyone else, non-compulsories. So you're not going to be taking these until you've already got 2 other troops units. And do remember, these guys, they're not as strong as they used to be. You need to be within 24 inches of a Cortex controller if you want them to be reliable. You need to look at the fact that they're slow. 6 inches a turn is not far to move for this unit. you need to be smart with your placement of them, and pretty much they're just a hard counter to squads of things like Marines. Where it gets really hard for the Castellax is when they get charged, especially if it's something good in combat. What do I mean by this? Well, Castellax focus on rage. They're all about maximum amount of attacks from getting the charge off, because they basically double their attacks when they charge. If you get charged, especially by something like Red Butcher Terminators, you're going to lose your squad. Another thing that really hampers them is, unless you've got Siege Wreckers on the squads, Dreadnoughts. A Talon of Dreadnoughts will absolutely shred a unit of Mechanicum Castellax. You just don't have the strength to hurt them. Leviathans, even scarier again, but at least the occasional lucky boy, you might be able to stun or shake the Leviathan. Good luck doing that. I've seen single Contemptors and used single Contemptors to hold up units of 3 Castellax comfortably, and eventually the Contemptor won the fight. That's the way the cookie crumbles. So I can't recommend them as an anti-dreadnought unit, but as anti-power armor, they're pretty much second to none. Alright, fast attack. Here's the first Force Org slot that really starts to suffer from the terrible website design that Forge World's got going here, because it's missing all the flyers. And there's also a unit, the Arlatax, I believe they're called, that don't even have a model, but that's not the website's fault. So, let's start with the Voltarax. Broken beyond belief when it first came out, because it was a toughness 7, which shots fired at it dropped it by strength by 1, because counters having an all-round flare shield for some reason, which was stupid. It's not a vehicle. But it meant that things like bolt guns, anything strength 4, couldn't hurt it. They also haven't clarified if the way certain rules worked at the time, if when one got a grounding check, did the whole squad get a grounding check, things like that. It's been a little bit cleared up since then, a bit better written. It's big. How big? Okay. As you're looking at the model now, a Rhino will pretty much fill the base of the model. So, it's big. It's bigger than a soft drink can. A little bit shorter than a soft drink can in height, and a bit fatter in diameter. It's a big unit. What are the pros it brings? It brings a 3-shot haywire gun to the battle on a flying platform, and it's also got Havoc launchers, which means 4 strength 5 AP 4 templates, which are twin-linked. So it has a lot of area damage, really good against hordes of crap infantry like, well, Tech Thralls, Imperial Guardsmen sort of level stuff, you know, your Imperial Militia. Very strong anti-tank option though, and that's what people take it for. They've just got to make sure they stay within Cortex controller range. That's the Achilles heel of the unit. It moves so quickly that it's hard to stay within range of the Cortex controls. But a unit of these things, and they are expensive in points, moderately speaking, and they are a monstrous creature, so they can be used to hold up enemy squads in the late game once they've sort of outlived their usefulness in other ways, because lots of wounds, high toughness, you know how it goes, AP2 attacks. But squadrons of these used to outflank are really good at destroying things like whirlwinds, Sicarans. They can even damage and kill Spartans, but it does take, you know, a couple of turns to do it, just because of the amount of hull points they have to reliably kill them. But I believe it's 3 haywire shots per model, so a unit of 3 of these, 9 haywire shots, you can do the maths, very, very quickly eliminates enemy vehicles. Why they gave such a powerful weapon to a flyer, fucks me. Alright. Mechanicum Vorax. Absolutely love them, but if you're going to run them with the rotor cannons, you really want to make sure you upgrade them to the poison ammunition, because rotor cannons overall are terrible. It's like a heavy bolter with a lot less strength. Why would you want to take that? You wouldn't. Actually, probably a closer comparison is an assault cannon with a lot less strength, half the strength in fact. And I believe they're AP6, so pretty much useless at killing things. Once you give them the poison ammunition, they start wounding things on 2s, well, that's a different ball game, because suddenly the weight of fire they put out is handy. Even against other monstrous creatures, you can force a bunch of armor saves. Plus, Vorax move 12 inches, and they've got fleet. The downsides, well, they've only got a 4-up armor save, and they're not as tough as Castellax, only 6 toughness. So, yeah, it's a tough one. I like to use them on Praevians in my legions a lot, but I think for Mechanicum, having them as an option on the table is really strong. A unit of 5 or 6 of them is a massive threat that you can't ignore, and you can use them to quickly get up into the enemy's face in the first sort of turn or two, where they have to be dealt with. You can't allow 5 monstrous creatures to just be running around with rending attacks in your deployment zone. So they have to be dealt with, which means it buys time for the rest of your Mechanicum army to do what it wants while they're out there doing their thing. Can never, ever overstate how useful that is. Alright, the Ursarax. Lightning Claws or Power Fists on a Thalax is essentially what it boils down to. They are fast and deadly, but they need numbers to be successful. Maxed out units of these will make it across the table, and they will leave a dint in everything they touch. They will absolutely pulverize squads of Legion Terminators just through the sheer amount of attacks they have, and the fact that the attacks from their Power Fists are strength 10. I would actually advise getting a smaller squad of these, say 5, with the Lightning Claw option, and using them to eliminate things like hordes of enemy infantry, because 5 of them with Lightning Claws charging in, you're looking at something like 15 plus attacks, hitting on 3s or 4s depending on the unit you're charging, usually wounding on 2s or 3s with rerolls, and they'll absolutely slice up Marines, absolutely slice up units of Guardsmen. Criminally underrated and underutilized units. But you pay the points penalty for it, so that's the trade-off. And remember, there are only armor saves of 4, so things like Heavy Bolters will strip off the wounds very quickly, and Blood Angels with all their assault cannons, nasty. Alright, Terax Pattern Termite Assault Drill. I don't think I covered it with the Marines, but you've got a model which can transport 12 infantry equivalent. Okay, very handy. Comes up where you want, handy. Has its own shooting attacks, handy. It's a good unit, is what it boils down to. Not a great unit, just a good unit. You pay a points penalty over the drop pod, but it doesn't interfere with the amount of models you can hold in reserve for your drop assault lists. All in all, Terax Pattern Termite Assault Drill is a great transport option. But you also eat up a 4-Sorg slot. Alright. First of our fast attack ring-ins, we have the Arvis. What does the Arvis bring to the table? Fuck all. You can give it, I think, like a single autocannon or a single las cannon as a main weapon. What it brings? Transport. You can put a Magos and a unit of, I don't know, Secutarii, Myrmidon Secutors, something like that, with a Magos in it, and yeah, fly it on, becomes an instant threat. Downside, very low on the hull points, low on armor. I don't know. It's cheap. It's very cheap in points. Not so cheap in money, though, so I don't know. I can't recommend it. I know Tim loves it, and he runs a lot of Mechanicum, so his opinion probably has a lot more weight than my opinion does, but I don't know. I just can't get my head around it, and I've never, ever felt threatened when I've taken them on the couple of times that I have. It's just been a walkover, so. Alright, Voss Pattern Lightning Strike Fighter. Very, very potent in Mechanicum armies. The missiles especially, it's a great alpha strike option against enemy armoured assets. Very good at dealing with enemy flyers as well, with the las cannons and such. Points penalty though, kitted out, you'll be paying a lot of points for one of these, and it's only like a 2 hull point armor 11 flyer, so you know, it's important to take anti-air. This is a good way of doing it. I recommend it. And of course, the Avenger Strike Fighter. Yeah, I have a couple of friends who have some of these. It's good. The main Avenger bolt cannon, I think it's 7 shots, strength 6 AP3 off the top of my head. Do remember I don't have a codex sitting in front of me when I do these videos. I'm trying to remember it all off the top of my head like a horrible autistic encyclopedia. It's good at anti-infantry. Can take some bombs as well, I believe. It looks really cool as well. I think I've got to give it points for that. I think out of the 3 options available, the Arvis, the Lightning, the Avenger is really the coolest looking, and it looks like something out of World War II, like a Mosquito or something like that. It's a ground attack aircraft, though, more than it's an enemy anti-flyer. But because of that, I think I'll recommend it over the Lightning as an anti-air choice, because it's more useful for more games. Where the Lightning comes in handy is when you have an enemy flyer you really need to kill, or there's a Spartan tank that you want to sink 4 Kraken penetrators into. The Lightning is really good at that, but the Avenger, on the other hand, this is the sort of thing where you can bring it in and go, okay, the enemy didn't bring a flyer, they didn't bring a Spartan, but I've got so much firepower in that minigun mounted in the nose, I'm going to go around and kill that infantry squad over there. And it'll do it. That's valuable. That's more versatile. So I think unless you know you're coming up against flyers consistently, where the Lightning is going to pay for itself, I would suggest the Avenger is probably the better choice. Alright, heavy support. Now there is one missing off this list, and that is the Basilisk/Medusa. I rate them. I think they provide a lot of firepower. But in a Mechanicum list, I don't think they add anything more than the Mechanicum's own specialist units do. Therefore, I don't suggest them being a go-to option. I guess is what it boils down to. Alright. Where to begin? Let's start with the infantry. Myrmidon Destructors. Well, conversion beamers, really good if you have a big long table and you can pop them up in a corner and fire at long range all game. Great. Rarely happens. What about Volkite? Okay, a lot of firepower, but you are paying a lot of points for these models to have. Okay, so 6 Myrmidon Destructors with Volkites is something like 200-something points. A Legion heavy weapons squad with Volkites is something like 120 points. 3+ armor saves, easier to stack in buildings. I'd rather the Legions. So I can't really suggest it for volume fire weapons like a Volkite. The Irad, probably the nastiest weapon they have, especially in Zone Mortalis. I don't think I'd want to come up against them. So I think that's their niche currently. The old Graviton Imploder got incredibly nerfed, but rightly so in my opinion, because it was basically the Graviton guns from 7th edition 40k with a fuck ton more shots, something like 3 or 4 shots off the top of my head, that hit on 2s with rerolls because of preferred enemy, which every person and their dog had on them, and then it would wound on your armor save, which was usually 2s or 3s of Marines, and it was AP2. And because the preferred enemy, any rolls were 1, were a reroll. So it was like 3s to hit with rerolling 1s, 2s to wound with rerolling 1s, and please remove your Terminators from play. And it was just completely broken. And Mechanicum players would sit there and go, oh, I don't see what the problem with it is. So, yeah, very glad they nerfed that. To this day, though, Mechanicum players are not happy that they nerfed that. As a Legion player predominantly, I'm like, yeah, no, that was broken. Just the fact that it was always AP2, the sheer amount of shots especially, the fact it was on a unit with preferred enemy, it just made it too reliable. There was no trade-off. I know I don't want to sidetrack here too much, but look at a Legion Plasma Gun squad or a Plasma Gun squad in any army. What's the trade-off there? You get a weapon which is high strength, like you're going to hit on your ballistic skill, you're going to wound on something like 2s generally, and the enemy's going to struggle to make armor saves. But those units generally don't have preferred enemy, meaning that you get to re-roll to hit. Those units will have penalties like gets hot, so there's a chance you could cop wounds from failing to hit. So, again, it balances out. There's a trade-off. You go, maybe I don't want to fire... you might have a squad that's down to one model on an objective. It's the last turn of the game, and the enemy's got their own squad, and you're like, well, I could fire this plasma gun here, and guaranteed that enemy unit would then not be able to kill my guy on this objective next turn. Guaranteed. But if I fire it and I fail and I kill my guy, I lose the objective anyway, and the enemy's just going to gain it. That's rough. That's a hard choice to make. With the Myrmidons, it was just I'll just fire the Graviton guns. No penalty, no drawback. Yeah. Anyway. Let's go big boys. The Thanatar Siege Automata. Very good unit, but you pay a lot of points for it. This is a Wraith Lord or Wraith Knight equivalent. 4 wounds, toughness 8, has a large blast plasma weapon on its back, which makes you re-roll successful cover saves against it, and it's a strength 8 AP2 plasma as well, if my memory is correct. And in its wrist is a pathetic Mauler pattern bolt cannon, twin-linked, which is 3 shots, strength 6 AP3, fuck your Marines. Strong unit. The only thing that sucks about it is that it's slow and purposeful, so it doesn't get Overwatch, can't run, but that's not what you're taking this thing for. And you can cast things like Cybertheurgy on it to make it even more powerful, fire twice, things like that. Overall, fantastic unit, paying like 250 points, I believe, for one. So you do pay a points penalty, but you're pretty much immune to bolt gun fire, thanks to toughness 8. You have a lot of staying power, and you can get them in units of 5. I've never seen anyone do it. I think Tim's trying to do it over at the Eye of Horus, but yeah, I hate the things. Rerolling cover saves is just rude. He also has another variant of the plasma, the Mechanicum Thanatar Sinus, which is 25 points more. I think it's 275. The exact same stats, but the plasma cannon on its back, the plasma helix mortar, whatever it's called, drops to a small blast 2-shot weapon, and the range is something pathetic like 18. Why would I ever take that unit, and hence why no Mechanicum player has ever taken that unit? It is crap-tacular. And it's got gets hot on those shots, so what would you prefer? A big, massive blast with long range, or 2 small blasts with short range? I'll take the big blast for 500, thanks. The last Thanatar is the Calyx Siege Automata. You get Thanatar stat line, and you get a las cannon on the shoulder. It's crap. Bright side is it's got a Grav Fist, which is good in combat against buildings. But okay, here's the thing. This unit is designed to crush buildings. That's its thing. It's a siege bot, but it has a 1-shot las cannon, so it's useless at killing buildings at range. Like, it's going to take you a long time unless you roll like 666 number of the beast on your first shot of the game. Like 6 to hit, 6 to penetrate the building, and a 6 on the damage result. Unless you do that, you're not going to blow up a building. So you need to get there and punch it with its Graviton Hammer Fist. Okay, cool. You move 6 inches and have no ability to run. You only have 2 attacks. So if I have fortifications, say I'm playing something like Iron Warriors, I will throw a 10-man tactical squad into combat with you, use them to block your way, whatever it takes. They will hold you up for several turns as long as I can pass leadership tests. You're only ever going to kill 2 in a best case scenario. Chances are average of 1, by the way. So how long do you reckon a squad of Marines will hold up one of those for? Probably the whole game, realistically, by the time he's lumbered close enough. But it's going to take him 4 turns to get to the average fortification if he's deployed exactly the shortest distance possible across the table from one. It's never going to happen. So don't buy it, ever, guys, until they change that weapon to something like a battle cannon or a neutron laser on its shoulder. Get rid of the slow and purposeful so it can at least run. Something like that. Until that happens, avoid it like the plague. You are pissing away your money. Alright, the Karachnos Assault Tank. This one has really cool fluff. It's all about this sort of phosphax barrage, laying siege tank with these lightning gun side sponsons, and on the actual tabletop, it's really, really lackluster. It needs some sort of bonus, whether it's larger templates or the templates themselves do more damage. Beyond the rule of cool of taking one, I cannot suggest it. It is not a viable weapon in 30k. It's just not good. It's like the Legiones Astartes Whirlwinds with their poor hull points, low strength weaponry. Just avoid it, guys. The Krios Venator. Yeah, broken is the first word that comes to mind, but no one's ever worked on the points of it. And people will argue that it's broken. I'll say a 7-shot plasma gun equivalent tank, which is cheap, relatively speaking, for that kind of firepower. It can be taken in squadrons. Is flare shielded on the front, so I think it's armor 13 or equivalent 13. Yeah, it's rough. In auto reductor forces, where they become like your go-to selection, you could be looking at 9 of those things on the opposite side of the battlefield, which means, well, do the math, 9 by 7, what have you got there? I believe that would be 63, so 63 plasma shots coming at you every turn at long range across the table. No thanks. I'd like to avoid that, and that's only probably going to use up the first 1,500 points of an army. Yeah, no. The Krios Venator is broken. Is it the bad kind of broken, like the Custodes were? No, not at all. This is like chipped. Slightly chipped glass. Broken. Tiny points change is something I'd like to see done to it, or a change in vehicle squadron size, dropping it to like 2 vehicles, something like that, off the top of my head. I believe it's 3 vehicles, I could be wrong. The Krios battle tank, on the other hand, is a lot more balanced. The main lightning cannon weapon, strong but not overpowering. So that's fine. I think it's fine anyway. Transport options. So the Krios battle tank has sort of a cousin with a longer chassis, which is essentially the chassis of the Karachnos, and that's the Triaros transport. The Triaros, very good transport. It has this thing called the shock prow, which means that basically anything it rams, it will probably win the contest unless it's ramming a super heavy, and even then it's got good chances of fucking up the super heavy. Also got a decent transport capacity, seems to be the go-to transport for most Mechanicum armies. On the other hand, there's the Mechanicum Macrocarad Explorator. It's a Land Raider, for all intents and purposes. Looks freaking cool. I've never seen one in the flesh. Mechanicum players either use Land Raiders, or they use Triaros. So, yeah, I don't know what to make of that. It's a really good model, good unit, I guess. Hampered by the fact you can't assault out of it, but you can't on the Triaros either. Triaros does have the ram, the shock prow, on the front though. But the Macrocarad does have some really good weapon upgrades, like the Irad cleansers it's got there now. That thing is terrifying to Marine infantry. Infantry of any kind, in fact. Yeah, I don't know. Alright, let's go Lords of War. Ordinatus Sagittar and Ordinatus Ulatar, or Ulator. These are ludicrously big. Just imagine each set of tracks is roughly the size of a Krios battle tank. So, maybe the size of 2 Bane blades side by side, is a good indicator of how big one of these is for footprint that it takes up, which makes it nigh unplayable on many tables. City tables especially, it becomes sort of corridor bound, makes it hard. Yeah, that said though, it's a very effective weapon, but you're going to be playing it in like 4,000 point games, and at 4,000 points, it's chewing up a quarter of your army. I don't know that it's worth it for that. So, where it's terrifying is those sort of best case for a Mechanicum player, pretty much an open board for it. If they can sit this thing on a flat 6x4 table and just stare at you, especially with the Ordinatus Illator, and fire that sonic weapon, which hits everything in like 120 inches range of it, that will kill most of the enemy army in pretty much one shot. That's rough as fuck. But with these giant wards of war, I mean, the thing's bigger than a mastodon. It's just very skeletal, the framing of it, which is why it's only about the same price as a mastodon, but it's a lot bigger. Yeah, it's a rough one, guys. I really don't know how to put it, because these big centerpiece models are just that. They're centerpieces. They're so hard to put on the table and actually play in game terms. I don't suggest taking them, which is the same thing that happened last week with the Stormbird and the Thunderhawk. And people said, oh, but, you know, you didn't talk about how good a unit they are. I'm like, well, I don't need to talk about how good a unit they are if they're just impossible to fucking play a game with. Or so convoluted and so much of a pain in the ass to place onto the table and try and play. It's just not worth it. You know, it shouldn't be a chore to use these units. It should be incredibly fun. And it is not incredibly fun to use these units. So that's why I'm saying just don't bother with them. Unless you want something that looks really nice in the painting cabinet, these are not the next step for your army. Alright, knights. We've got a lot of knights to pick from here. Where will I start? Mechanicum Knight Combine. Alright, there's a good one. Your sort of Styx class knights, I believe they are. Double check. Questorus Knight Megara and Styx. Both really good. Styx has a shitload of firepower, and the Megara has that lightning cannon like off a Krios tank. If you want the firepower of a Krios battle tank with some of the fighting ability of a knight, this is your point of call. The Styx gives you a lot of volume firepower, and so I think out of the two, that's the one I'd lean towards more often, with that Volcanite Carronade. I think it's the Volcanite Carronade. Again, could be wrong, guys, this is all done off the top of my head. I'd go for those. If you're going to talk big knights, well, here's the tough one. Cerastus Knight Lancer, really strong in knight armies as your HQ selection. The Acheron with that flame cannon is terrifying. The Castigator, volume firepower, big sweeping attack with its sword. All three are viable options. The Atropos, though, is the biggest risk-reward one, so that's the one I'd lean towards, and I do have an Atropos, because the Las Cutter weapon is pretty mediocre, but the Singularity Cannon is thematic, fun, and devilish to use. So, the ability to fire a Vortex, possibly damage yourself when you fire it, things like that, it's got a lot of flavour, and so for that reason, I really, really rate it. Now, one of the interesting choices, I'll just clear all filters to bring it up, that for some reason wasn't shown there, the Knight Periphon. Oh, and there he is. Actually, Knight Porphyrion, not Periphon. What was I thinking? Okay, it's about the same size as a Warhound Titan, and it has a shitload of firepower. This is sort of the absolute upper end of a model that I would actually put on the tabletop, because this thing's huge. A regular knight is about the same height as the Mechanicum crest on this thing's chassis at their high point. absolutely huge. Give you an idea, there you go. There's a picture that shows a dreadnought next to one. Dreadnought comes up to its knee. It's about 4 contemptors in height. It is huge. Consequences, it becomes a little bit unwieldy, but the firepower, the weapons on it, it's excellent. In fact, it's superior to, I guess, superior to a Warhound Titan. It's cheaper in points, easier to deploy on the battlefield. The firepower is more consistent. Yeah, it's a solid unit. It would probably be the go-to Lord of War out of the big ones over the Ordinatus platforms. I'd still go with regular knights before this, though. Alright, one last guy to talk about. Anacharis Scoria. Use it as a HQ choice, perfectly viable. Obviously, you don't need the giant scenic base for this guy. The Scorpion King, as it were. Can use him as a Magos, can use him as mounted on a band. He's a Dark Mechanicum special character. You could use the lower half of him and swap that out. Swap out the top half of him for another Magos of your own creating, or maybe get rid of the bottom half and just put him on foot without the Scorpion carriage. That's some options, but it's expensive, which is why I didn't really put it in the HQ section at the start of the video. Between him and Dracovic, both are really, really strong special characters for Mechanicum. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're worth taking every game. Scoria recently got debuffed. He was once a Primarch killer, comfortably, which was stupid. But I know it pissed off Mechanicum players, so again, tough. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Probably isn't fair that you had a character who was half the points of a Primarch and could kill them with ease. So, yeah, that's fair. He deserved that debuff, because what happened was his staff was something like it hit, and every time it hit, it automatically did 3 wounds or something bullshit like that at AP2. I can't remember it exactly, but it was broken in his previous incarnation. So now he's a lot more balanced, still really strong character. Yeah, Scoria and Dracovic are both Dark Mechanicum HQ choices, if you choose to take them. They've got their moments. I wouldn't necessarily, though, suggest that they're worth buying or taking just for the sake of it. If you're going to take them, have a thematic reason. Have a reason why you want to take them in general, and you'll get a lot more out of it. So, that takes us to the end of this Mechanicum episode. Hopefully, I remembered as much as I could, as many units as I could. As I said, this website, as you can tell, is a clusterfuck with a lot of units from a lot of Vorsorg slots not being in the appropriate slots. Don't know why that is. I'm assuming models just have a tag that whoever programs the website just has to add, and they just didn't. But things like Scoria, if you go to this page, wherever I left it, where I removed all the filters, and you'll see just Scoria is not in there. None of the lightnings are in there, so a whole bunch of units aren't even in their own slots yet, which is it happens all the time on this website. You might go to something, I think when Thousand Suns Magnus was out for a couple of months and he still wasn't in the Thousand Suns section when you clicked on it. Just stupid things like that. So, but the Triaros is here though. It made it into this one, which is good. So I can show you that. Anyway, back to the outer circle. I hope people who are getting into Mechanicum picked up something out of this. I know it is rattled off at a rapid pace, but please take in the information. As I said, wherever my opinion conflicted with someone who knows more, I've pointed it out, so hopefully you can say, well, look, Mechanicum guy rates it, Macca doesn't. Maybe the Mechanicum guy knows more, because he's the one who actually plays the army. And I'd say, you know what, that's a fair call. Anyway, see you all next time.